I want you to picture the kind of night where nothing is supposed to happen. Rain on the tin roof, a kettle going cold on the stove because I forgot about it 20 minutes ago, my boots still on, even though I'd been home for an hour because some nights you just don't feel like taking them off. That was the night she knocked. 3 knocks, not fast, not desperate, measured, like someone counting to 3 in their head before they let themselves do it. I live on the edge of Kestrel Hollow, which is not a place anybody visits by accident. It's a border settlement, the last human township before the demilitarized strip that separates our territory from what's left of the old Corvid assembly zones. We don't get strangers here. We get supply convoys twice a month. We get patrol rotations. And once in a blue moon we get some fool tourist who thinks the frontier looks romantic in the brochures. We do not get knocks on the door at 11 at night in the middle of a storm. I opened it anyway. You always open it. That's the first rule out here. You don't leave anybody standing in that kind of rain, human or otherwise. She wasn't human. I want to be honest with you, because if I dress this up it stops being true. My first thought wasn't fear. It was just stillness. Like my whole body forgot what it was supposed to do next. She was tall, taller than my doorframe by a good 6 inches, so she'd bent down without me asking, folding herself in that careful way people do when they're trying not to seem like a threat. Her skin had this pale blue-gray cast to it, like dusk caught right before it turns to night, and her eyes were too large, too dark, but not in a way that frightened me. In a way that looked tired. Genuinely bone-deep tired. She was wearing what was left of a flight suit, torn at the shoulder, blood dark, almost black dried along one sleeve. And she looked at me, straight on, no hesitation, and she said the last thing I expected any alien to say to a stranger on a rainy doorstep in the middle of nowhere. Please don't call anyone. I am not here to hurt your family. That was it, that was the whole thing. 5 words that told me she already knew what kind of place this was, already knew what a human household does when danger shows up, already knew, somehow, that I had a family inside. And I stood there with the rain coming sideways off the roof, completely speechless, because in 26 years of living on this border, I had never once had an alien beg me for anything. Let me back up. Let me tell you about Kestrel Hollow first, because you need to understand the world this happened in before you understand why it mattered so much. We're not a rich settlement. 19 homes, 1 schoolhouse that doubles as a chapel on Sundays, a co-op store that never has enough salt. The wind here never really stops. It comes down off the northern ridges, and it just runs through the valley like it's got somewhere to be. At night you can hear the old defense relay towers humming, this low-frequency thing you feel in your teeth more than your ears. Most nights, that hum is the only proof we're not completely alone out here. The Corvid Assembly used to control this whole sector, decades back, before the Concord pushed the border line 40 clicks north. My grandfather used to talk about the old skirmishes like they were something distant, something that happened to other people. But out here, distant doesn't mean safe. It means the danger just hasn't found you yet. We get galactic patrols through here sometimes, not ours, theirs. Conquered treaty ships doing border sweeps, checking for smugglers, checking for defectors, checking for exactly what showed up on my porch that night. And when conquered soldiers come through looking for something, they don't knock. They don't ask. I didn't know any of that yet, standing in my doorway. All I knew was there was an injured woman-shaped stranger with blue-gray skin bleeding onto my porch boards, and she'd used the word family like she meant it as a promise, not a threat. "Who are you?" I said. Not even really a question, more like my mouth trying to catch up with my brain. "My name would mean nothing to you," she said. Her voice had this strange double-toned quality, like 2 people speaking the same sentence a half-second apart. "But you may call me Vesh. I need 3 hours, maybe less. Then I will be gone and you will never see me again. I promise you this." 3 hours. She said it like a debt she intended to pay in full. I should tell you I've got 2 kids sleeping upstairs, 7 and 11, and a wife, Marla, who was in the kitchen when the knock came, who came around the corner with a dish towel still in her hand, and just froze when she saw what was standing in our doorway. I watched her face do about 4 different things in 2 seconds. Fear. Then something that looked almost like recognition, though I didn't understand why until later. Then something steadier. "Tom," she said to me quiet, "look at her leg." I looked. Vesh's leg under the torn suit had a wound that was cauterized black at the edges, the kind of injury you get from energy weapons, not from anything falling or crashing. Someone had shot her. Recently. It hadn't even stopped smoking. "They're behind me," Vesh said. "Not far. I lost them in the ravine, but they will find the trail again by morning." "Who's them?" I asked, even though some part of me already knew the answer was going to change everything about that night. "Concord Enforcement," she said. "I was a translator assigned to their 6th Border Division. 3 days ago I discovered something in the encrypted freight manifests I was not meant to see. Weapons stockpiling in the demilitarized zone. In direct violation of the treaty your species signed with mine 40 years ago. I want you to sit with that for a second, the way I had to sit with it, standing in my own doorway with rain running down the back of my collar. They are not planning a border dispute," she said. "They are planning an incursion, your settlements, all of them along this line. I tried to report it through proper channels, and the officer I reported to tried to have me killed instead." Marla made a small sound behind me, not quite a gasp, more like all the air leaving a room at once. "Why us?" I said. "Why my door? And here's the thing that still gets me, even now telling you this." She looked at me, really looked, like she was reading something written on my face, and she said, "Because your house was the only one without a weapon rack visible through the window, I did not want to frighten anyone with a gun in their hand already." A pause. "And because I am out of choices and I am out of time, and I did not want to die alone in a ditch without at least trying. Now I'm not a hero. I want to say that clearly because this isn't that kind of story. I'm a maintenance tech for the relay towers. I fix humming machines for a living. I've never fired a weapon at anything that wasn't a coyote going after the chicken coop. But I brought her inside, because what else do you do? We got her to the kitchen table, got Marla's old field kit out. She used to be a combat medic before we settled here, something she doesn't talk about much. But that night I was grateful for every hour of training she'd ever had. She worked on Vesh's leg with steady hands while our daughter Ruthie stood in the hallway in her pajamas, wide-eyed, not making a sound, the way kids do when they understand something serious is happening even if they don't understand what. "Go back to bed, baby," I told her. "Is she going to die?" Ruthie asked, not scared exactly, just asking the way kids ask things. Vesh, through the pain, through everything, turned her head and looked at my daughter and said, "Not tonight. Not if I can help it." That's the moment I stopped thinking of her as a stranger. I don't know exactly why. Maybe it was that she bothered to answer a 7-year-old honestly instead of brushing her off. Maybe it's just that some things cross species lines without needing translation. Marla finished dressing the wound around midnight. By then the storm outside had gotten worse, wind slamming against the shutters, and somewhere out past the ridge I thought I heard something that wasn't thunder. A low mechanical whine, gone as fast as it came. "They're using thermal trackers," Vesh said, and I realized she'd heard it too, heard it before I even registered it as sound. "Ground units. 2, maybe 3. They will not risk air support this close to a human settlement. A stray shot hitting your homes would violate treaty terms they still, for now, pretend to care about." "For now," I repeated. "For now," she agreed. I asked her what she needed. She said she needed to reach the relay station, the actual signal tower, not the housing unit I worked in during the day, but the transmission core itself, half a mile up the ridge. because it was the only equipment powerful enough to punch a message through the jamming field the enforcement squad had thrown over the valley the moment they realized she'd run. She needed to get the manifest data to a conquered oversight channel that couldn't be intercepted or buried by the division that was hunting her. Half a mile in the dark, in a storm, with soldiers closing in, and a hole in her leg that Marla had only just managed to stop bleeding. "I can't walk it," Vesh admitted, and I think that admission cost her more than anything else she'd said all night. "I need someone who knows the terrain." I looked at my wife. She looked back at me, and I swear in that look, 12 years of marriage passed between us in about 2 seconds. Every argument about risk, every quiet fear either of us had ever had about raising kids on a border town, every reason a sane man would say no. "I know the terrain," I said. "Here's where I have to tell you something about the walk up to the relay tower, because if you've never been out on the ridge at night in a storm, you don't know what silence really sounds like. It's not quiet. It's loud in this pressing, physical way, wind screaming through rock formations, rain hammering so hard it stings your face, and underneath all of it, that hum, that constant tower hum, getting louder as you climb." I half-carried Vesh the first quarter mile. She was heavier than she looked, dense in a way that didn't match her frame, and every few steps she'd hiss through her teeth but never once complain out loud. I asked her, somewhere around the halfway point, why she cared. Why risk her life twice now, once by exposing the plot and once by trusting a total stranger over a species that wasn't even her own? She was quiet a long moment, just the rain answering for her. "My daughter is 8 years old," she finally said. "She lives on a station 3 systems from here. If this incursion happens, if it succeeds, the division doing it will not stop at your border. They will need more, always more, and eventually the appetite reaches everyone. I did not become a translator to watch anyone's children grow up in that kind of galaxy. Yours, mine. It does not matter to me anymore where the line is drawn." I didn't have anything to say to that. I just kept walking. We were maybe 200 yards from the relay station when the lights hit us. 3 beams, hard white, cutting through the rain from the tree line below. And behind the lights, voices clipped, mechanical sounding through translator implants, calling out something in a language I didn't understand but recognized instantly as an order. "Stop. Stand down." Conquered enforcement. 3 of them, armored, weapons already raised, moving up the slope with the kind of discipline that told me immediately these weren't soldiers who bluffed. Vesh went rigid against my shoulder. "Go," she whispered. "Get to the tower, I'll hold them." "You can't even stand on your own," I said. "Then you'll have to be faster than they are," she said, and there was something in her voice, not fear, something colder and more resolved, that told me she meant every word about holding them off with nothing but her body if it came to that. I want to tell you I had some brilliant plan. I didn't. I had a half-mile of terrain I'd walked 1,000 times fixing that tower's power couplings. I had a storm working in my favor because their thermal scopes would be fighting the rain same as their footing was, and I had about 4 seconds to decide what kind of man I was going to be. I put Vesh down behind a boulder, gentle as I could, told her to stay low, and I ran. Not toward the soldiers. Away from them, up along the eastern switchback, the steep goat trail only the maintenance crews used because the official access road washed out 2 winters back. I could hear them shouting behind me, hear the change in their voices when they realized I'd split off from Vesh, hear one of them peel away to pursue. I have never run like that in my life. Lungs burning, boots slipping on wet rock, rain so hard I could barely keep my eyes open, and behind me, footsteps, armored, heavy, gaining. The relay tower access door was exactly where I knew it would be, because I'd installed the lock myself 2 years back. My hands were shaking so bad I fumbled the code twice. On the 3rd try it clicked open, and I threw myself inside just as something hit the door frame behind me. A shot. Close close enough that the heat of it singed the back of my jacket. Inside, the transmission core was humming louder than I'd ever heard it, this deep vibration that I could feel in my sternum. I knew this equipment. I'd spent 2 years of my life keeping it alive. I got to the console, hands still shaking, and pulled up the emergency channel protocols. The ones we'd been trained on for exactly this kind of scenario and never, not once, actually expected to use. The soldier hit the door a second later. I heard the lock mechanism scream and give. And that's when I heard something I will remember for the rest of my life, Vesh's voice from outside, shouting something in her own language, sharp and commanding, and then the sound of the soldier's boots changing direction, going back down the slope, toward her. She'd drawn him off. Injured leg and all, she dragged herself up behind him and given him a target he couldn't ignore. I didn't have time to think about what that meant for her. I had a channel to open. I won't pretend I understood everything I was doing on that console. I'm a technician, not a communications officer. But Vesh had given me a data core before I left, a small black chip, warm to the touch, that she'd pressed into my palm with a kind of desperate insistence. And she'd told me exactly which port to use, and exactly which frequency band would punch through the jamming field if I timed it right, between atmospheric interference cycles, which out here in a storm like that happened maybe once every 90 seconds. I counted. I watched the signal strength meter climb and fall with the storm's rhythm. And on the count that felt right, I slammed that chip into the port and I hit transmit, and I prayed to every version of God I'd ever half believed in that it would go through before the door gave way completely. The console screen flashed green. Transmission confirmed, Concord Oversight Council, Sector SCVEN relay. It had gone through. I turned around and the door was hanging half off its hinges, and standing in the gap wasn't the soldier who'd been chasing me. It was Vesh, soaked through, favoring her wounded leg so badly she was nearly folded in half but standing, alive. "He's not getting up for a while," she said, breathless, and there was something almost like a smile ghosting across her face. I may not look it, but I was trained for this once. "The message went through," I told her. She closed her eyes, just for a second, and in that second I saw something I hadn't seen on her face the entire night: relief. Real, bone-deep relief, the kind that only comes when a weight you've been carrying alone finally gets set down. I won't drag out the rest of it because you already know in your gut roughly how it ends. The Oversight Council received the manifest data within the hour. Within 6 hours, a full Concord investigative team was en route to the sector, not enforcement, not the division that had been hunting Vesh, but an independent body with the authority to override them. The 2 remaining soldiers who'd come up that ridge were detained before dawn. Their own commanding officer, arrested less than a day later on treaty violation charges that made front-channel news across 3 systems. Vesh stayed with us for 11 days while she recovered, while the investigation sorted out who could be trusted and who couldn't. Ruthie made her a get-well card with a crayon drawing of a spaceship on it that Vesh kept folded in her jacket pocket for as long as I knew her after that. Marla and her would sit on the porch some evenings, not saying much, just 2 people who'd both seen more of war than they ever wanted to, understanding each other in that quiet way. On the 12th day, a Concord transport came for her. She stood at our gate for a long moment before she left, looking back at the house, at the porch light I'd left on that first stormy night and never quite gotten around to turning off since. "You didn't know me," she said. "You had every reason to close that door." "You had every reason to keep walking past it," I told her. "Every house on this ridge had a weapon rack. Mine just happened not to." She almost laughed at that, almost. "My daughter will grow up in a galaxy that's a little safer tonight," she said, because a man I'd never met chose to believe 5 words from a stranger in the rain. I think about that a lot, if I'm honest with you, about how close I came to not opening that door at all. about how the whole shape of that night, the incursion stopped, the treaty upheld, however many settlements along that border line still standing today because of it, hinged on nothing more complicated than a man deciding, for 3 seconds in a doorway, that a stranger's fear was more real than his own. She never came back to Kestrel Hollow. I didn't expect her to. But every year, right around the date of that storm, a small package arrives at our door with no return address. Inside is always the same thing, a child's drawing, a little more skilled each year, of a spaceship flying over 2 small houses under a rain-heavy sky. I still don't know exactly what she risked, walking up that ridge with a hole in her leg to buy me 30 seconds at a console. But I know this much for certain. Some doors are worth opening, even when you don't know what's standing on the other side of them.